recent shows, or to be more precise, Mare is the TV show about Juvenile detention center, and main character Carlos and Álvaro. They are gonna be in today's stream. So Carlos basically is one of those arriving alongside with Álvaro, and they are gonna be spending like a couple of days before their trials, because they are currently going to the trials, and their case is basically still, not closed. And they were basically they were arriving to that detention center, while there is some characters, for example, Sarai, who is already gonna get out of that detention center. So on one hand, we have two newcomers, and on the other hand, there is a character who is gonna be out of this detention center, and she seems happy about this at first, but later on we will find out that she is not gonna be out of that center, because her life outside is even shitter, is worse than her life in this detention center, which is ridiculous. But Álvaro and Carlos, they are so scared of this new environment, and they never really faced real criminals before. But Carlos did. But Álvaro, he is basically from rich family, spoiled child, and basically he is studying in conservatory, and he is playing piano. Basically his life is completely the opposite of this juvenile detention center, and the reaction to his appearance basically was outrageous, because everybody knows him, and before he arrived everybody already knew who he is, and basically at this place everybody knows everything about newcomers before they arrive, and before their basically arrival everybody already treats them certain way. If it's a rich spoiled person, he's gonna be treated that way. But Carlos comes from a poor family with his brother, a criminal who is basically, who was already, spending time in jail before Carlos, and his history and basically his life is the more suitable and more related to that, environment that he's gonna face in this detention center. So for him it seems more easy to adjust, to adapt to that life. But when it comes to his life outside, basically he is a barber, and he has his girlfriend, and his girlfriend is gonna become a huge dilemma for him, because she's gonna be put in the middle of Carlos and the other guy who is gonna be the main villain of Carlos, because he's gonna decide who is gonna be the first priority for Carlos, his girlfriend or his future in that detention center. But at first they were basically in this TV show, introduced as just a couple of two young adults, and one of them, Carlos, working at this barber shop, and basically his girlfriend is always trying to get some time, together for the two of them. But given his situation, he is trying to basically get other work, like side hustle, and get as much money as possible. So the other problem for him basically comes when he is trying to prioritize his work over his girlfriend. And in this detention center, we have at least 3 female characters, and they are kind of central characters, but Sarai is the most important character, I would say, from this cell, because this room or something basically for female, but at this detention center they have mixed gender, like, facility and activities for both women and men, and all the interactions involving both men and women. So basically it is more like free space for both women and men compared to jail or prison, because this is not a jail and this is not a prison. This is a juvenile detention center, but some of those people, they basically either killed someone or almost killed someone. So they are not too far from real, convicts, but they are not old enough to go to jail or to prison. So this is why they are spending time in this juvenile center. And Álvaro basically 17-year-old, and his case basically is, of course, gonna be putting him as the main, suspect, but it was all about an accident. And in his case, he accidentally pushed another guy, and that guy basically broke his skull. He basically fell onto rock or something, like he basically, not intentionally, but pushed that guy. So he kind of did that, and he is feeling that basically, and he feels guilty. And his time in this juvenile detention center is not gonna be easy, only due to his guilty conscience and how he's not willing to get over it. Because once you're there, all your past doesn't matter anymore. There is present and there will be future. And this is actually the words from this TV show. One of the people just said this, that nobody cares about your past. You have your present and you will have your future. But you need to make your time easier by just, doing some activities, studying, and replicating your life outside. This is what correctional facilities do, especially mixed gender correctional facilities. And in this facility, basically Álvaro meets a lot of people, including some of them not being completely honest or transparent about their intentions. For example, he met this woman, and Violeta basically comes off as strong antagonist, because at first she seems friendly with Álvaro, but later on it turns out that she is not completely transparent, and she is even more, tricky and wicked type of character. But when I first time saw this character, I immediately just recognized in her that Lazorda from In the Mod TV show from Argentina, recent TV show about prison as well. And that character basically, not only does she seem like this character, but she kind of even acts, and her just facial emotions resemble me so much, that character Lazorda. But this is just my a little comparison, because we're gonna compare this TV show to that TV show in Álvaro, because when something just put a bar high enough, you have to compare to that project that managed to put that bar as high as possible. That project is the only right choice to compare to, because all other projects about prison, they are somehow lacking something, and they are not like fully exploring the subject of imprisonment and the life within the prison. But this detention, this facility specifically, standing out because of the young adults and how they are interacting. So it's immediately obvious that there is now as much danger as in a real prison, even in that TV show in Álvaro. At this point, they already got in a lot of troubles, but first episode of Mare aera, and there is still no feeling of the danger as we have in Álvaro, but this is due to the age of the main character Álvaro and all his, let's say, inmates. They are slightly different when it comes to how dangerous they can be. For example, they can be tricky and sneak around, but at the same time they do not go too far, and they are not able to basically kill someone within this facility. But there is some people who is able, and they are outside basically. For example, this dude is a member of some gang, and basically the gang is prominent, and it's called Los Pajaritos. So basically Los Pajaritos is a gang that Carlos is going to get in trouble with. And basically, as a barber, he got one of those members of Los Pajaritos as his client, and he shaved this dude Miguel, he shaved him and got some money from him, but that dude basically dated Carla's girlfriend at some point. Long ago they were dating, but he still has something onto his Carlos's girlfriend, and he's still not getting over it. He's still trying to pursue this, and he's directly threatening Carlos if something happens to his ex, which is current Carlos's girlfriend. Carlos is going to be in trouble. And this day is basically Carlos's birthday, and he is with his girlfriend. Finally, they got some time, but he immediately made her upset by telling that he is going to go his side hustle. He's going to work extra to, like, on his birthday. He's not going to spend time with her, even though she is, like, prepared for this day. And he's basically kind of overcommitting when it comes to money, I would say, because I don't think that one day could potentially change something when it comes to your well-being or your wealth, when it obviously, doesn't make you thousands of years, but he is prioritizing it, and somehow he is making this choice. And what will happen later, it is his fault, partly because he didn't prioritize basically his partner, and he chose some hundreds of euros over spending time with her. But the most important part is that she basically gave him this scissors, and this scissors basically will play the most vital role in future events. As a barber, this gift, like, is so obvious, but he will use it not, what it's supposed, like, or how it's supposed to be used, So we coming back to the Juvenile detention center and character Violeta. Violeta basically, as I already said, she's so similar to that Lazorde character from Álvaro, and I'm not only talking about the appearance, I'm talking about her character and her approach to resolving issues, to doing things. And she is kind of untrustworthy. Basically, she is doing activities and she is doing what it takes when she wants something. For example, this dude basically gave her a player or something. In return, she would pretend as if she, as she turned on by him, as she, attracted to him or something like this. Basically, she played a lot of people in this juvenile center, and she fools a lot of people, and she manages to get away with this. So this is pretty much the opposite of Lazorda, I would say. And the only difference, because that woman wasn't really tricky. She wasn't really, like this. She was more transparent when it comes to relations, when it comes to solving things. But they are adults and we are still in juvenile detention centers, so the difference is obvious. They are mostly, 17 years old people. They are not gonna be as wise or as, experienced as people in real, like in jail or in prison. And Álvaro himself is so anxious and stressed about little things. For example, he got a cigarette, but basically to smoke it you need to open a window, but there is no window to be opened because all windows, they are blocked basically. So he is trapped with his cigarette that he is not even able to smoke, and the stress just stacking up. And basically the first day in this juvenile center is the most important. This is like your first day, and the way you spending it basically setting your next weeks in this juvenile center, because if you're not relaxed, you're gonna be like that most probably next weeks, because you just said that yourself. And we have some basically flashbacks or moments before Carlos got into the juvenile center. And as I told you before, he was basically doing his side hustle and completing his job on his birthday, while his girlfriend was basically hanging out in a club where she met this dude, Miguel, her ex, who is basically a member of that gang. And as much like, as crazy as it sounds, he doesn't seem that dangerous. And this is the problem about this TV show overall. When it comes to antagonists, they are mostly like mismatching the character. They are not pulling it off, and they are seemingly like less dangerous as they are supposed to be in real life or in a prison, because in a prison, any bad guy, any bad, convict feels really dangerous. Not just dangerous, but really dangerous in TV show or in movie. But due to their age, again, I just don't feel any threat from this dude or any other guy, even though he did some worse things. He did really bad things, I would say, because after this club, basically they tried to rape his ex, and Carlos basically stood up and he immediately reacted to this, because he just came back from his side hustle, and he basically immediately interrupted this attempt. And this is when his scissors came to play. and he used it not as a barber but as an offender. And this is what got him into that juvenile center, basically. The moment when he put this scissors into this man, Miguel, who was basically trying to rape his girlfriend. So the real offender is Miguel, but Carlos just came in wrong time and the place was wrong. But it wasn't wrong if we're talking about him defending his girlfriend. He came perfectly in time, but to be not jailed or, detained, he came and did something really wrong. So basically, no witness, no person to justify his actions. Only his girlfriend, who knows that he was defending her. But all other people, basically, they were recording and staring at them as if there is no danger from Miguel, who is the real bad guy, but as if the only bad guy is Carlos. So basically his case is so complicated due to lack of witnesses, or due to Miguel now is in coma and basically he's not even able to go to a trial, and the case is not gonna be solved till Miguel is going out of that coma. And this coma basically is the only problem now for Carlos, because if Miguel is not getting out of that coma, most probably Carlos is gonna be in trouble, because no case is gonna be closed, or no witnesses, no real, no nobody gonna be just convicted but Carlos. And this is exactly what happened. And after that situation with his girlfriend, basically it was a flashback. And immediately after that flashback, Carlos noticed that his room or cell just on fire. And it's on fire due to Álvaro basically smoked that cigarette and accidentally basically, put on fire the entire room. And basically they survived. Nobody really hurt, but after that accident, basically there is a huge dilemma: who gave that cigarette and who gave that lighter to Álvaro. And Sarai basically stood up and took all the blame on herself, and she told that she gave basically the lighter to Álvaro. And she basically is gonna be out in a couple of days, but she did that even though there is no reason for her to take that blame, because she's gonna be out of this place in few days. But she took all the blame because, as we found out later, she is not so happy about getting out of this place because her mother is crazy ill, and her mother is more even dangerous than people in this facility. So she preferring to stay here instead of going out of there, and she chose basically life in this detention center over that life outside, which is crazy because nobody would ever choose that over your life outside. But in this TV show, they really came up with this idea that a woman in her ages would prefer being detained instead of being free. And this is the only part that I really confused, that somebody would ever do that, you know. But still, to create some drama and basically to put her and Álvaro together, struggling alongside, and they are going to be together at some point, but she is still crazy choosing this shit. And there is little chances for her to stay here, because if she is gonna be out, she will have to get out of this place, because there is no legal, like, you know, legal solution. Only little chances that she is legally can stay here, because once her time spent, she's gonna be, you know, out of this facility, this detention center. But they found some solution basically to keep her in this juvenile detention center. But Álvaro now found out that, not Álvaro, Carlos found out that basically one of the, let's say, inmates has that tattoo, which is the sign of that gang, and the member of this gang basically suffered from Carlos tried to defend his girlfriend when that man was trying to rape her. And basically Carlos put that man in a coma, and now his friends basically next to Carlos in another cell, and they are gonna to retaliate, because basically they found out that Carlos was involved in that shit, and they are going to be upset about that. But after that, basically we got some moments that basically showcasing how prison and juvenile detention center, what differences they have. I don't think that there is too much like distinct differences, but I noticed some. And basically in juvenile center they have so much space to do some shit, like to get someone hurt, or to basically do something that in the prison you would never do because of the guards and security measures, you know. And in this juvenile center there is plenty of moments when they can get free from any ice and do something stupid, basically, you know. But now Álvaro and Carlos, they are going to their trials and to finally get their, you know, cases closed. But it's not like they are gonna be, you know, finally justified. They are not gonna be basically, they are gonna stay in this prison for a few days, because trials still going. And during those days basically happened a lot of situations that affected somehow their future in this detention center. And some of those dudes from that gang basically put enough efforts, enough pressure on Carlos and Álvaro for them to feel the danger, basically. But still, when it comes to bad guys, when it comes to danger, I don't feel yet any danger from any of those dudes. Not only do they look like typical, bad guys from streets who are only able to, threaten you first time you see them, but later on it just turns out that they are not really just dangerous because they are just pretending. So when it comes to this dude, for example, it seems more like he is pretending, but all other dudes from his gang, they are just not even slightly dangerous. They do some stuff, they trying basically to put in danger Álvaro and Carlos, but they do not seem that dangerous. And to understand what I'm talking about, just try to compare the real convicts from any of those TV shows I mentioned in Álvaro or other prison TV shows, and you will see the difference when it comes to the most dangerous people in correctional facilities. Their first appearances already making you feel that danger, but it's not even necessary for them to do some real stuff like this to basically just beat someone or kill someone. They just seem and they act like that, and you just believe that because of the perfectly picked actors, basically, and they're acting just fitting so good. But for example, in this gang, there is even a dude who is completely the opposite of that character, like deemed to be dangerous. For example, this dude basically plays a character called Yedu. I'm sorry if I just pronounced it wrong, but Yedu basically is one of those bad guys, but he is the most basically, I would say, controversial, because all he does is just either flirting with someone or trying to basically, do the opposite of what, considered bad guy activities. He doesn't even look like that. And I don't understand why his character picked to play that type of character. Why this actor picked to play this character, because he's not matching that in any way. The vibe is not there. The, emotions and his appearance is just complete mismatching. So, but the character Sarai, her character is pretty strong. She is reasonable. She is trying to stay in this detention center. She is reasonable because she has her reasons. She hates her mother because her mother basically is crazy. And her mother has issues with alcohol, with a lot of stuff, and she was trying to basically take care of her mother when she was outside, but now she's gonna be out, and that means that she will need to take care of her mother again. So she needs to stay in this detention center to not to take care of her mother, to basically get free of that shit, because she's just tired of her mother. She's tired of taking care of her mother, and basically that shit takes your whole life. But it's really worse when your mother is not adequate, and your mother is not adequate, you know. So taking care of someone who is not adequate and not appreciating your help is the worst future. And there is some basically workers. There is one dude who is working at this place, and he is taking care of everyone. He seems struggles. If he sees someone struggles, he is gonna help that person. And this is because he was basically once detained and put in this place, and he spent basically his childhood, his adulthood in this place. And he is a former he is a former convict, or he is a former juvenile offender, or I don't know what it's called, but he was basically spending time in this place, and he is so familiar to the environment, and he knows exactly what needs to be done to make their time easier. And he is trying to help not only Álvaro but other people who just arrived. And it's really ridiculous, because that dude basically who is just working at this place, trying to help Álvaro and other people more than their own parents do. And basically Álvaro's parents, do not really care, especially his mother, about him being innocent, but the only thing she does care is what other people would think about the reputation of the whole family because of Álvaro being detained. And Álvaro basically accidentally pushed that dude who was a son of Álvaro's mother's friend. So this is why, like, she now sees her own son as a, shame, something she should be ashamed of, and she is ashamed of her own son because of that accident. But it was his first days, and he was trying to find basically someone who would make it easier for him. And basically Sarai was the only person who actually managed to ease up that time for Álvaro. And they had something because of the, similar, I would say, personalities. They both feel undervalued and not appreciated enough, and they seeking that love, and they are trying basically to find it in each other. And for her, basically, her mother is the problem, so she needs to stay in this detention center. And for Álvaro, his mother is not completely, like, you know, she is not basically loving her son unconditionally. And this is why he is confused, basically, about the future. And if he's really, if he's really just trapped in this place, or if he can get potentially some future in this place and to find even more friends within this detention center, And basically, Sarai got into this detention center after he took care of her mother, and after another crazy night turned into a huge scandal when her mother tried basically to bite a security at some shop or something. Like, she went crazy, and basically Sarai was trying to again take care of her mother, but next day she basically put all that like pressure she felt after her mother went crazy. She basically put all that on her teacher, and she almost killed him. And that shit basically got her into this detention center. So basically she was not able to control herself, and she basically let that out, and her teacher basically was the victim of that situation. But again, everybody seems to be accidentally involved in some type of, murder or in some accident. And everybody seems to be, innocent. And there is not a lot of, like, situation when we see real, like, people doing something intentionally. So most likely they didn't like show that for a reason, but just every character seems to be accidentally put in this place because nobody did that intentionally. And from what we've seen, every case is just an accident, and either Álvaro or Carlos, both of them just put there because there wasn't enough witness, to tell you whether they were innocent or not. And as far as I understand, in place like this, you need really just, to stay as calm and just lay low, because any activity, any bad action could potentially just worsen your case and make you hard time to get out of this place. And this is exactly what's happening to these dudes, because they are trying to not get into troubles, but troubles just come to them. And in the face of this gang and after one of those, members was killed, they are trying to put Álvaro and Carlos in a situation when it would look like Álvaro or Carlos, they are really shitty persons and they are real killers. They are really killed someone, or they are really dangerous. And they all almost basically managed to make it seem like this. But Sarai basically still freaked out because of her time in this place coming to an end, and she is not willing to, go out of this place. She is trying to stay, and she is pissed off, and she is trying to basically put that anger on the main woman who is in charge of this place, and he is basically breaking the windshield of your car and putting that anger on a person who is actually trying to keep her in this detention center. But Sarah is just not aware of that, and he thinks that this woman, Laura, is preventing Sarai from staying in this place and basically trying to force her out. But we found out that basically Laura is actually trying to find that solution when Sarai can legally stay in this detention center. And they found that solution, and that was just because Sarai has some potential in her skills to use it as an example for other people in this detention center, and to basically foster their studying and their activities, to basically encourage other people to study and to spend their years in this detention center more productively. And it sounds ridiculous, but they actually kept her, and she's not going to get out of this place because she's wanting so bad to stay there. And at some point Álvaro played some part of her staying there because it feels just she's falling in love with him, and there is another reason for her to stay. And he basically made her sure that she has nothing outside, but she has everything like here in this juvenile detention center. And even when she saw him trying to jump off the roof, that moment just, made their bond even stronger, because after that event, even though he didn't jump really, she felt basically something, that she has something to fight for, and this relationship seems to be that thing. And other guys, they basically starting to see Álvaro as a threat, but not as physical threat, but as emotional imbalance within this facility, because every moment is about Álvaro and all the focus on him, and he's gonna be difficult to hurt, he's gonna be difficult to make him do something, because he's constantly under someone's control, and he's constantly, you know, in some situations when you cannot just get easily him, you know. And this makes basically his future and the future of his friends not so easy. But in next episodes, I'm still watching it and I'm trying to understand if this TV show, if it's really able to, you know, go further with the representation of bad characters, antagonists. If it's really able to make antagonists feel like they are antagonists and not just some, you know, school level of threat, but they are really real threat. So this is my only problem with this TV show, and I want them to put more efforts into antagonists, because protagonists, they are good. Álvaro and Miguel, Gabriel Guevara finally played some different role, and that was something I was looking for a long time. And his movies mostly putting him playing that dude, which is the opposite of this Álvaro character, and more like this type of character, which is a bad guy. Even his role in My Fault, Your Fault, Our Fault is more like a bad guy rather than someone like who is really, you know, emotionally vulnerable, but he's constantly just aggressively intense. And finally we can see him vulnerable, and we can see him getting out of the comfort zone, which is the role of just he used to play, and now like he is on the other side, on that side when he is, you know, not the main like villain, I would say, not the main aggressor, or in a good way I would say aggressor, because like antagonist could be not completely bad person, but just someone who is putting all bad vibes in all, you know, danger situations and putting people, you know, in danger. And now he is just on the completely opposite side of that character. He is playing the character who is suffered by that bad guy. And this is the like finally something I can really just, you know, enjoy, because I don't really like any of the My Fault, Your Fault movies because they are just not my cup of tea. But this TV show is somehow more interesting because the variety of characters still better, even though antagonists, they are not in any way good, but main characters, protagonists, they are really good. And probably this woman Violeta is the only antagonist who is really making me believe that she is like bad intentioned person, and she is gonna be tricky as hell. She is gonna be like a person who is putting other people against each other, and she is just playing that perfectly. So thank you for watching, and this was my first part and probably the only part, but I'm not sure. If I like next episodes, I would make more of this Mare TV show. But if I don't really, I would not do that, because I just only feel that I'm going to, talk about something when I really like it. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.